Bet horse racing on DRF Bets. We'll match your first deposit of $200. Get free expert picks and past performances, plus weekly cash back. All from DailyRacingForm, the most trusted name in horse racing.
Hi everyone, David Aragona and Craig Milkowski here, taking a look at one of a pair of stakes races for the newly turned 3-year-olds on Saturday at Tampa Bay Downs. Race 6 is the Pasco Stakes. This one is going 7 furlongs on the dirt for the 3-year-old colts and geldings. And Craig, we've got a field of 6 signed on here, and while there is a pretty significant favorite on the morning line, I wouldn't write anybody off in this 6-horse field.
No, I think it's a pretty wide open race in here. The 6-5 morning line caught me a little bit by surprise. I mean, I guess it makes sense. I'm sure the horse will be the favorite, but I'm not quite sure he'll be that strong of a favorite because, as you mentioned, it's a pretty contentious group, in my opinion.
Yeah, that morning line favorite is the number 4 Champion's Dream. He is coming off a graded stakes victory, which I imagine does have something to do with his short price on the morning line. He's just more accomplished than anybody else in this field. But we do have a number of runners coming in off recent victories, a few that have run well over this Tampa Bay Downs surface before. So definitely a lot to consider in this Pasco Stakes. Before we get to the major contenders, let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this field, because there are a number of runners that want to be forwardly placed, at least based on their limited resumes so far. And Craig, the number 5 Armstrong is shown on a slight early lead. I think that's largely going to depend on how well he handles the dirt, making his first start on this surface.
Yeah, that's a tough call. I look forward to hearing what you think about that, where he switches surfaces. I think this is going to be a pretty contentious pace. We didn't quite make the threshold for the fast pace designation, but you'll notice we do have three horses grouped up near the front end. So I wouldn't expect anybody to be stealing away on an easy lead here.
I agree with that. The number 4 Champion's Dream, he did show the ability to come from off the pace when he won that Nashua last time, but he's another one that has some early speed. So it feels like this is a pace that could potentially heat up, but not one that really has to. So I wouldn't be too deterred by any kind of running style in this pretty short field. Let's take a look at one new feature in the Timeform US PPs. If you've browsed Timeform US on your mobile device, you'll notice the Timeform US tab in the DRF mobile PPs. And one of the new features there is the finish projector. You can toggle over to that from the traditional pace projector. And Craig, we've talked about this in some other videos. It's just a visual representation of the power picks, what the Timeform US algorithm selects. And they do have that favorite winning the race, the number 4 Champion's Dream.
They do, and it's not a particularly tight finish. Looks like a couple lengths. So on the previous Timeform US speed figures, he has a pretty decent advantage.
Yeah, speed figures definitely a major factor in that algorithm. So you do see the number 3 Handsome Playboy and the number 5 Armstrong, a couple of the other runners that have earned pretty solid Timeform US speed figures, also predicted to do well in this race. Well, let's go through the major contenders, and we'll take this field in post-position order, beginning with the number 1 Shaq Diesel. And we'll take a look at one of his races, actually 2 back in his past performances on October 30th, when he faced off against another horse that he's meeting in this race, Zydeco. Zydeco is the one in the middle there. Shaq Diesel is in the yellow silks on the outside, trying to wear him down. And he takes him a little bit of while to really reach top gear, Craig. He has to switch over to his right lead, but he really does start to lengthen his stride pretty nicely in the final eighth of a mile. And I liked the way he finished this 7 furlong distance.
Yeah, once he was able to wear him down and get alongside, he really pulled away, as we can see in the PPs, to win by 3 lengths. And you'll note this is a horse who has really improved. He started out in just a maiden claimer. I don't ever really hold that against a horse first out, because the connections are, maybe they just didn't know what they had in this spot. And he's actually a horse who's changed barns a couple of times. This will be his 3rd listed trainer in here. The big jump came when he made that first trainer change. Not sure what to make of this one, because they're not really high profile connections, any of the 3, but he's a horse who's run pretty quick and is getting better.
Yeah, I will admit I'm not familiar with the trainer that currently has this horse. Obviously, as you said, a switch since the last race, but I agree with what you were saying about how he's improving with every start. Just seems like he's on the upswing generally. He did finish behind another rival that he'll be meeting here last time, Handsome Playboy, in the inaugural stakes at Tampa Bay Downs. But I thought that was maybe a tougher spot than this one. Some horses in that race, like Super Chow and Dreaming of Kona, have both come out of it to win stakes at Gulfstream. Dreaming of Kona actually did his via disqualification. So Shaq Diesel might be getting slight class relief here, and I do think that the 7 furlong distance really works for him. Horse that will be trying to stretch out to the 7 furlongs for the first time is the number 2, Loco Abario. Let's take a look at his last race in an optional claiming maiden event where he was not in for the tag at Gulfstream Park. And Craig, this was his first start on the dirt after 2 races on the Tapeta surface at Gulfstream, and definitely seems like he took to the main track pretty well.
Yeah, he's another who began his career in a couple maiden claimers. Ran okay, broke his maiden, but I assume was DQ'd since he shows the second maiden win there. And he came back and really looked like a different horse on dirt, winning easily by 6. I will note the speed figure didn't really jump up, just a 1-point increase. So not sure it was the surface so much as despite the seeming increase in class, maybe he just caught a weaker group in there.
Yeah, I thought the field had something to do with it. I just wasn't sure if there was a lot of quality behind him in that race, though he did win pretty well. He got away with moderate pace. You see that blue color-coded Timeform US fraction for the half mile. So probably going to have to face a little more pressure if they go from the inside in this race, but he definitely is one of the ones to consider in this Pasco. Moving one slot to his outside is the number 3, Handsome Playboy. And let's take a look at his last race at Tampa Bay Downs. This was an optional claiming allowance victory by him. He was the heavy favorite this day, going off at even money, and he won like an even money shot should.
He did. He looked really good doing it. He's a horse who has just run well pretty much every time out, except for that one synthetic try where he didn't run as well as he had in some others. But I really liked what I saw from him in that dirt race last time. Even though he only got a 91 speed figure, you will note that it gets the P designation. It was a really slow pace. I tend to think he's a better horse than that. And I think he ran really well in that inaugural stakes at Tampa. That is a race which has proven to be a pretty strong race with all of the top 3 coming out of that one to win.
Yeah, we mentioned the runbacks out of that inaugural stakes. Feels like that might have been a tougher stakes than this Pasco has come up, and he ran pretty well in that spot. Also was riding the rail almost the entire way, kind of made a move to challenge the eventual winner, Super Chow, coming off the far turn. I wonder if maybe the rail wasn't the best place to be on that December 3rd card at Tampa Bay Downs, so perhaps you want to upgrade that performance even a little bit further, and he definitely is one of the major contenders in this race. Let's move on to that morning line favorite, the number 4 Champions Dream. And we'll take a look at his last race when he won the Nashua Stakes, a grade 3 event at Aqueduct. And Craig, I know we talked about this race on our podcast, the Timeform US Pacecast, and we had a little bit of a debate about this speed figure because I know this was a tough one to make. I think you had to break this out from the other races, although it's tough to really be sure how fast these lightly raced 2-year-olds have run. Champions Dream is game to wear down these 2 on the lead, but those 2 others that hit the wire with him haven't exactly come back out of that race to run too well.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. The horse that ran second behind him ran 4th next time out, but his speed figure just regressed a point. The horse who finished 3rd won 2 starts later with just a slightly lower speed figure. So it's still kind of a debatable one for me, but it's one that has enough question marks that I don't think I want to take a very short price on him. And it should be mentioned he's changing barns as well, from the Danny Gargan barn to the Marquez barn. And for me, that's always a little bit of a negative when you have a horse coming who's done nothing really wrong so far other than this sloppy track over his head Champagne. His other 2 dirt races looked really good.
Yeah, it does seem a little bit strange. As far as I know, there has not been a change of ownership. I think he's still owned by the same ownership group that had him before. So it is interesting that Marquez gets this horse. For what it's worth, Marquez does not have great statistics off trainer switches like this. The percentages are okay, but the ROI is not too healthy. And this is a horse that did show real quality in his debut at Saratoga, going all the way back to September when he won going this distance and got a 99 behind time from US speed figures. So he definitely has run fast enough on a couple of occasions to be pretty tough against this field. I just think there are some questions at what figures to be at pretty short price. Moving on to the other Mark Casse runner in this race, the number 5 Armstrong. He'll be making his first start on the dirt, as both of his prior races, including this last out victory that we're looking at in the Clarendon Stakes, came on the Tapeta synthetic track up at Woodbine. Craig, I like the grit that he shows battling back down on the inside to win this race, but dirt has to be a question mark.
Yeah, I think the dirt is a question mark. I also think the distance is a little bit of a question mark. He doesn't scream 7 furlongs to me when he's running. His breeding's a little bit it's a little questionable. I won't say in a bad way. I think it's just tough to get a read on. Curious what you think about that, both surface and distance limitations. But just watching him run, of the main contenders in here, the 7th furlong is a little bit more of a question for me than some others.
I can see that. Mucho Macho Man, I just generally think of him as a little bit more of a turf sire. I know that's a little bit counterintuitive because he's a horse that had most of his success on the dirt, obviously a Breeders' Cup Classic winner. But I really do like him as a turf sire, and maybe that speaks to why this horse ran so well on synthetic. We'll see if he handles the dirt. Mark Casse has decent runners making this move. I personally couldn't read too much into the dam side. I frankly have never heard of the dam sire, Mr. Jester. That's one that's unfamiliar to me, and there hasn't been a lot of production that would sway you one way or the other with him perhaps not handling this surface. So we'll see what we get from this horse. He's the kind of runner that I would want to price on if I were going to consider backing him. We'll close out the field with the number 6 Zydeco. We'll take a look at his past performances in Time Form US. And we've already seen one of his replays when he was second behind Shaq Diesel. That performance was 3 back for him at Gulfstream on October 30th. Since then, he lost at 7-2 in an allowance race. Then he came back last time, back in that starter allowance condition, and got the job done at 4-5. Just seems like this is going to be a step up in class, Craig.
Yeah, he's definitely a little lacking in the class department, having been in a maiden claimer, a couple of his races and starter allowance races. The one thing I'll give him is that he does have real high speed. You can see a lot of red fractions in his Time Form USBPs. He draws a good outside post, so I think he is definitely one that's going to be pressing the pace. I just don't find him fast enough to be a real contender here.
Well, let's take a look at our picks in this Pasco Stakes. Both Craig and I are taking a shot against that morning line favorite, the number 4 Champion's Dream, and we're actually both taking horses out of that inaugural stakes at Tampa Bay Downs, just going in different directions. Craig, I think you selected the more logical one, the number 3 Handsome Playboy, who's just run well in each of his last 2 starts.
Yeah, we all know that speed figures take money at the windows, and I think his may be disguised a little bit, his form from that last out when he won easy, tracking a really slow pace, kind of blew the field away. And I think he's an improving horse and could easily see him hitting triple digits here, which would be good enough to put him right there at the wire.
I'm going in a different direction with the 4th place finisher from that inaugural stakes, Shaq Diesel. He does have to get a little bit faster to beat this field, but I'm hoping if the pace does heat up on the front end, he's the one that will be finishing best of all. I think the stretch back out to 7 furlongs is going to work for him, and he figures to be a generous price in this race. So the number 1, Shaq Diesel for me, and the number 3, Handsome Playboy for Craig in the Pasco Stakes at Tampa Bay Downs on Saturday. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.